Yo, what's going on with Ghost here, and today I am bringing you guys another comparison video between the new EM2 and Krig. And I wanted to make this comparison video because the EM2 has been kicking up a little bit of noise because it's really powerful. It's been, you can consider it to be a pretty broken weapon. And I just wanted to see if the EM2 is easily ahead of the Krig, or if the Krig still maintains its top spot in the current state of Warzone. I was going to initially do the C58, but that didn't really work out. I wasn't really feeling the C58, and I was like, most people think the Krig's better anyway, so I decided to just stick with the Krig, and here we are. But before we get into the comparison, I want to say, if you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button. We're on the road to 2,000. We're about, 180, 170 away to get the video out. It'd be greatly appreciated. And also, you guys can do me a favor and follow me over on my Twitch channel at alwaysghost_. We tend to stream every day. Grinding, trying to get content and whatnot, and trying out all these weapons. And actually, with this new little update that they just released, we're going to be going a little harder because we have some comparisons to make, you know what I'm saying? Because certain weapons got changed, and we need to do some things. But with that being said, man, let's get into this comparison. And here we have the recoil pattern for the EM2. And to be honest, this recoil for this gun is a little bit like 50-50, I would say, because on one hand you have people saying that this is a non-skillful weapon with no recoil and very powerful, and on the other hand people saying, oh, you need some skill to control the recoil. For me personally, I kind of stand in between, where I feel like it has a low amount of recoil considering how high damage this gun is, but it does require a little bit of attention, because if you don't control it properly, you're gonna end up going all over the place at certain ranges. But initially, my first impression of this weapon when I first saw it was kind of weird. I mean, when it first released, you know how streamers are. They tend to buy the gun, get tier 100 or the tier 100, and then they would use the variant. And as they were using that variant, I had a little concerns for this weapon, because at the time of, I guess, day one, the weapon looked to be slow ADS. Now it's probably the sight or the iron sight that they, or I guess the base sight, not iron sight, the base sight of the EM2, because this gun does not have an iron sight, it has a base sight. And it's that weird little base sight, which I thought it was horrible. I'm glad that the 3x scope was what's it called, available, because I was under the impression that you weren't able to use the 3x scope, but the 3x scope was the base side of this, and thankfully it wasn't, because that base side is not good. But when I put on the 3x scope and I first used it in Warzone, this gun felt just incredible. And to be honest, I'm a little confused, because they allowed for a weapon of this caliber or this damage to be in the game, but they went ahead and nerfed things like the AMAX, they nerfed the FARA, and they're slowly but surely nerfing the Krig once again. And it's just kind of confusing, because they literally set up a whole patch, a whole mid-season update, where they literally just completely destroyed every weapon and just made everything weaker for the sake of making the time to kill in Warzone a lot higher. But then they go around and, have the OTS now that's melting everything. This particular EM2, which is, when you hear the statistics, is going to blow your mind away, because it's not right, the kind of stats this gun has. And the fact that this gun doesn't have too much recoil, at least in my opinion, the recoil is very easily controllable. You compare this to a prime AMAX, this gun completely blows the AMAX out of the water, aside from maybe the fire rate. And even the C50, yeah, you can make the case of the C58 as well. I think the both C58 and EM2 are two weapons that, I don't know what they were thinking, adding those weapons, considering they literally nerfed the AMAX for basically having the same characteristics as both these weapons. It's kind of been an interesting thing happening with these guns. And in this new update that they just released, I was kind of confused why they didn't nerf the EM2, but then I realized that the newest patch that they dropped today, being Monday, with all the weapon changes for Season 5, I realized that was supposed to come out at launch. Don't know why it took them a few days after launch, but, I was like, okay, that's why they didn't add the EM2. So I'm assuming that this EM2 within 2 weeks, maybe 3, maybe a little bit less, it's going to get nerfed, because this weapon it's not right, and it kind of contradicts everything that they've been trying to do. But anyways, man, with that being said, let's go over to the Krig and the stats, and you're going to see what I'm talking about. And then we have the recoil pattern for the Krig. And in my opinion, I think that this weapon is definitely the more reliable choice at range. A lot easier to control, a lot better accuracy. But that's not to say that the EM2 doesn't have the range game, or I guess the ability to be controlled easily, because if you compare the EM2 to the AMAX in terms of controlling the recoil, the EM2 takes way less, way less skill. And on top of that, I'm pretty sure it's more powerful than the AMAX ever was at range. I'm not sure. I don't remember the stats of the original AMAX. So you guys would have to tell me that in the comment section down below. But anyways, I guess moving on to the first statistic that we're going to talk about is the fire rate, which we have the Krig with the 652 RPM, and then the EM2 with 533 RPM, and yeah, the Krig has like a 100 RPM difference. In this case, though, I think it's not the biggest deal considering the nukes that the EM2 shoots and the fact that, like, yeah, the Krig might have the fire rate advantage, but then I think fire rate, or at least for me personally, I think fire rate's like more of a close range thing, not really a long range thing. And both these guns are AR, so you're not really gonna be sitting here engaging in these two weapons at close range. You know, you might have those occasional rare engagements where you do, but for the most part, you're not gonna be dealing with that. But anyways, moving on to the damage, this is where it's gonna get really crazy. So we're gonna start with the EM2. So for 0 to 26 meters, the damage for the head is 61. The chest damage is 45. The stomach is 41, and the extremities are 41 as well. Which again, I don't really know what they were thinking in making this weapon this powerful, considering all the changes they've made in the last, like, what, 2 months. But anyways, moving on to the Krig for 0 to 36 meters, we have 45 damage to the head, 33 to the chest, 30 to the stomach and extremities, which are the limbs, which I forgot to mention earlier. But anyways, as you guys can see, the difference in damage is quite significant, especially at that range. I mean, literally, the EM2 is like, what, a 4 or 5 shot to the head if you're able to hit the shots. But, you know, obviously you're not going to hit whole headshots unless you're a hacker, or you get lucky. But even without a headshot, like, you're literally doing almost as much body damage with the EM2 than, like, a Krig headshot at that range, which is just absurd. And again, I quite don't understand what the thought process here. Like, if they were willing to nerf a gun like the AMAX, I don't understand why the EM2 came in like this in the first place. You know, that's all them, though. But anyways, for the 26 meter and above for the EM2, we have 55 damage to the head, 40 to the chest, 37 to the stomach and extremities. And then for 36 meters for the Krig, it's 38 damage to the head, 28 to the chest, 26 to the stomach and extremities. So obviously, again, the difference in damage is quite significant. But in this situation, the Krig is, you know, a more reliable weapon. I still think many people still prefer the Krig over the EM2, which is kind of strange, but it kind of reminds me of the Kilo meta when the Kilo was obviously underpowered compared to the AMAX, but most people still rode with the Kilo throughout that meta. And I think in this case, the EM2 is obviously the, on paper, more or much better choice than the Krig, but I don't know, people just might not be able to get comfortable with it. I mean, I personally don't know if I'm going to run the EM2. It's very powerful, very good, but the Krig just has that feeling of comfortability. And that's the same thing I liked when I used the Kilo back in the day. And also in terms of, like, the C58, which I don't know if I mentioned this earlier, but the C58 is, like, I guess one of those sleeper contenders, because I think that's like the number 2, number 3 AR at the moment. Like, if you're not using the Krig, you're using the C58. I personally don't really like the C58 anymore. I feel like it's a little bit too weak. I ended up, you know, trying to make a comparison between the C58 and EM2 because I think, you know, C58 is stronger than the Krig. So I wanted to compare two high hitting ARs, oh my god, between one another, and it just didn't work out because I couldn't get in the groove with the C58. I just was not feeling it. But with the Krig, a lot easier to use, a lot, like, for me personally, a lot easier to use, a lot more comfortability. But, you know, that's really just all how you prefer your weapons. C58 was once really good for me, really loved it. Right now, I don't. Maybe in, like, a week, I'll try to revisit this comparison because I think the comparison needs to be addressed before, you know, the EM2 gets nerfed. But if the EM2 does get nerfed, like, I think that, I don't know, man, the conversation might dwindle down because quite literally, I think the one thing that carries the EM2 is just the damage. Again, many people have complaints about the recoil. I mean, and also some people say that this gun takes no skill, which is kind of weird. First day it came out, people were overreacting and being like, oh my god, this gun takes no skill. And now I look at people, or the streamers that are still playing the game, and they're still using the Krig, they're still using the C58. They're not minding the EM2. And I don't know whether that's because they don't have it all fully leveled up. But I don't know, man. At the end of the day, I feel like it's just going to come down to giving it a try, giving it more than 1 or 2 games, just really getting in to see how this gun performs, just to see if it suits you. Me, personally, I don't know if it's going to suit me. I might try to give it a try in my main loadout. I may or may not work out. Who knows? I'm going to have to find out as I'm using it. But regardless, in my opinion, I think that the Krig still remains on top. The EM2 obviously poses a real threat, but I think the preference between players is going to mostly go towards the Krig. I could be wrong on that. Who knows? We got to wait and see again. This EM2 is fairly new to the game, not even a week into the game. So we just got to wait and see how the meta shifts, see if the EM2 ends up eventually becoming meta, which, you know, I would say I have hope it does, or not hope, but I feel like it could happen, but it's just going to come down to player base and whatnot. But anyways, man, let me know what you guys think about the EM2. Do you personally like it if you've been able to use it in Warzone? And if if you have any knowledge about it, how do you rank it? And yeah, man, do you think it's better than the Krig? But anyways, man, thank you guys for watching, and I'm out. Peace.